Hey, welcome to the Buck Brief. Chadwick Moore joins on this episode. He is the author of the excellent authorized biography, Tucker, about our friend Tucker Carlson. He is also a writer on a whole range of things, chadwickmoore.com, and writes for The Spectator. Chad, good to see you.
Hey, great to be with you, Buck.
Did COVID make people uncivilized barbarians in public? That's not quite how you put it in your article on this one, but I gotta say, I like where your head's at on it. I think people have turned into barbarous savages when it comes to the way they act in public. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I agree. I've just been noticing it everywhere and in the tiniest ways. I mean, even if it's just, waiters being so rude and impersonal and snotty to people, or clerks or anyone. I mean, those are minor examples. And, I thought maybe it was just me. I'm like, am I getting soft? I live in New York, but I've been spending a lot of time down south. And I'm like, maybe I'm just getting soft. Maybe I'm just comparing it. Until I started asking people around me, friends and whatnot. And they all agreed. They're like, yes, I've definitely noticed that people are just being more badly behaved and ruder to each other. And most people seem to think that it is a sort of long COVID psychopathy or agoraphobia.
Yeah, well, you wrote this piece in the New York Post. Why is everyone in NYC so rude? And I think that in a lot of cities that I've spent time in now, I've noticed that there's an increased rudeness. But I also think that here's a part of the theory. One is COVID did a lot of psychological damage to people that they still don't really, and not the virus, the stuff that they made us all do, where we were treating each other as like vectors of disease and policing each other. And it really turned us all into like the Stasi against each other in this country. I think that that's German secret police, for anybody who doesn't know the reference, who had a vast surveillance state and all kinds of stuff. I think that's part of it. And then I also look at the deterioration when it comes to quality of life, crimes and quality of life issues. And you mentioned marijuana smoke. I was just in New York City. Can't go outside. My little 4-year-old nephew, can't take him for a walk with my sister and her husband without just clouds of weed smoke, like completely inundating us. This is not the way people should be living their lives.
It's not. I mean, the whole city is just weed smoke. You're right, and every storefront is a weed shop. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think you're right, and I think that another symptom of COVID was, especially in these sort of totalitarian Democrat fiefdoms like New York, where people were locked inside for a year or two and they just forgot how to behave. I don't think people really know how to treat one another anymore. They became so self-absorbed. They did nothing but order things on Amazon and watch movies and live in these little fear bubbles. But, on top of that, I mean, look at the leadership we have in this country, and especially in Democrat cities. You have a leadership that goes out of its way to humiliate and demean its people. The migrant crisis is the most obvious example of that, where you're giving billions of dollars to people who are committing asylum fraud. They're being treated better than vets, than American citizens and people on the dole here. On top of that, you've got all this money going to foreign wars. You've got, the fentanyl crisis. You go down the list. You've got bail reform. You've got squatters showing up and just laying claim to people's homes. And, I think that says to people is that your leadership and your government clearly doesn't care about you. So why should anyone else? If the government can so openly treat you like garbage that they don't even mind if you notice, then what does that say about how you're supposed to treat your fellow man? I think it also comes from not just shock of the COVID and the mental problems that created in people, but also in the way our government is treating people.
Yes, I think so. I think that people are acting in a way that is very unkind to one another on a more regular basis. I also think that airline attendants after COVID, when they got to be like judge, jury, and executioner for everybody in a flight because of masking policy, I think that they got not only did they get drunk with power, and I had some very ugly exchanges with airline attendants during that period because they weren't just enforcing rules, like they were clearly getting off on the sort of arbitrary power they had of like, your mask has been down for too long, sir. It's too long. It says who? Like I'm eating. You know what I mean? The whole thing was, people forget this now. What an abuse. It was insane beyond words what was going on with them. And I feel like they still kind of have a little bit of that. There's still a little sense of like, we still have the ability to throw people off the plane. So I've never been as belligerent toward airline. I shouldn't say belligerent, but I've never been as pessimistic about the manners of airline attendants, formerly known as stewardesses, as I am now. So I see it in a whole range of places. Oh, also in the service industry, I think a lot of service industry people got paid to be at home, and they kind of feel like, well, why can't I just be paid to be at home all the time? Let's be honest. I've gotten that sense because they were the ones more than anybody else who were like immediately getting on that COVID, that COVID gravy train, if you will, of getting paid to be home. Although teachers, I know, because the teachers unions, there were others. But I think now it's like, I don't even want to be here. I can't tell you how many restaurants I'm in. People are going to send me. You always hate this too. Someone will send me like, I work 3 jobs and I'm the nicest. I'm like, yeah, well, we're not talking about you. You know what I mean? Like, this is a general perception that's out there. In Miami, I can tell you in the service industry, the attitude is if you're at a restaurant and someone brings you food and it's an hour late, they're like, you're lucky we brought you anything.
It's, New York City has always been known for great restaurants, great service, but that's where I've noticed it the most, not just restaurants. I mean, clerks, cashiers. I think you really nailed it. I think especially when you have a lot of young people in those professions, these are people who maybe came out of college, they never had a job, they're staying at home to get paid or paid to stay at home. I think you're right. It's like this attitude of like bitterness and resentment that you have to go to work when you're living on the dole for so long, sitting at home collecting a check, and the service industry, this bile that people have lately for the customers. It's really incredible, and it's unpleasant. You don't even want to go out to eat anymore.
I want to talk about Gay Pride Month with my friend Chad, who, while gay, is not the biggest Gay Pride Month fan out there. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say because the whole corporatization of this and the mandatory month of genuflecting, I think it's a lot for people. So we want to get into this. We want to have this discussion. We'll get to it in 1 second. I'm a firearms guy. I got a lot of guns at home. In fact, I got to talk to my wife. I got to get Chad, you live in Brooklyn, so you're not allowed to have any guns, really. I mean, like theoretically you could, but like not really. I have to get a second gun safe now. I'm now at double gun safe territory, but that's in large part because of my friends at Bear Creek Arsenal. I've now got my second, soon to be my third Bear Creek Arsenal firearm, and I try to stay as up to speed and tactically proficient on these guns as I can. I go training on the weekends with my brothers. I got a friend who's a former SEAL who puts us through a lot of the basics of training to make sure that we have decent skills. If you're a firearms enthusiast like I am, you got to check out Bear Creek Arsenal. Accuracy, craftsmanship, durability, and price cannot beat those 4 when you put them together when you come to Bear Creek Arsenal's website. You'll see for yourself wide range of premium calibers, a fraction of the price of competitors. I love it. I've got the Grizzly, which is my 9mm Bear Creek Arsenal pistol. It's phenomenal. I've got the BC-15, which is their AR-15 equivalent, and it can go toe-to-toe with the most expensive ARs out there, and it's maybe a fourth, a fifth the price of them. BearCreekArsenal.com. That's the website you should go to. Make sure you use code BUCK to get 10% off your first order. BearCreekArsenal.com/Buck. Use promo code BUCK for 10% off your first order. All right, Chad, is Pride Month, which starts in a little bit here, but I did want to ask you about it. Are they going to approach some of it a little differently? Last year was the first time I can remember that there was something of a pushback. I wouldn't say a full-on revolt, but a pushback against like, hey, Target has to have like a transgender section for kids during Pride Month or else.
It really does feel that way. I mean, and I hope I'm right. I mean, it seems like we've hit in the last couple of years, especially last year, some sort of breaking point where it's just become so obnoxious and so ridiculous. And then, not only do you have Pride Month, you then have 37 LGBTQAI plus holidays throughout the year, like the Trans Coming Out Day, the Trans Remembrance Day, the Trans Visibility Day. Blah, 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 blah. It's so ridiculous that it doesn't seem like it can. It seems like we're taking a step back this year, hopefully. I mean, probably for many reasons. First of all, I believe I saw that Target said they're scaling back their, transgender baby onesies this year or whatever they sell during Pride Month. And also it's an election year. So, the Democrat Party has an interest in keeping their insanity a little under wraps to make it appear that their people are, rational, normal human beings, which of course they aren't. So that might help keep Pride Month down. But there's so much exhaustion too. Not only that, the far left sort of gender marchers, they're all on the Hamas train right now. So I think that might be taking a back seat to celebrating Pride. They're going to be, maybe not marching and go to gay parties, but marching
Will there be
for Hamas in Palestine.
I was going to say, will there be a lot of pro-Hamas stuff in the gay Pride parade?
Oh, there absolutely will be, especially in cities like New York. There will be the Queers for Palestine, 100%. There'll be the Palestinian flags. You can count on that, which is, exactly how you know that these movements have nothing to do with the things they purport, like, ending the war, protecting Palestinian lives. It's simply a big Marxist push to dismantle Western civilization.
I mean, my understanding, Hamas, not big on trans rights or gay rights, for that matter. That's my understanding.
That's what I heard. And, I believe I just saw that Joe Biden issued condolences for some murdered Iranian war.
Oh, he wasn't murdered.
Warlord?
It was the president and secretary and the foreign secretary of Iran. President of Iran's like not as big of a deal as our president because the supreme leader is still, Khomeini. But the helicopter crashed. People are saying maybe it was sabotage.
That's right.
I don't think the people who say that don't understand. You go to this part of the world. I mean, the Iranians, couldn't engineer their way for the most part out of a paper bag. I know, they've got a nuclear program. Yeah, I mean, we had our first nuclear test like 100 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you start to look at not quite 100, but you start to look at this stuff and you're like, the Iranians, yeah, they're not lighting the world on fire with their ability to do well. Other than light the world on fire, they're not really good at very much.
Yeah, they're big on rhetoric and not really that great on engineering, it seems like. Yeah, well, Joe Biden issued condolences for his death. I mean, didn't this guy have some kind of edict out to kill gay people and had one of them beheaded and all this other stuff?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah, I mean, Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, murders gays as a matter of course. But the Biden administration, I think it was the State Department officially expressed their condolences about this. You start to get the sense that the left, which isn't even a really good term for them. I don't know. Maybe we should talk more about what we should call them. But the left really just supports anything that destroys civilization and all that is good. Like if I show you a group that is really bad and they have any political support, it's going to be leftists. It's going to be Democrats who are making excuses for them in some way. Whether it's serial killers or child molesters or Hamas. If they're looking for a constituency that supports them in some way or tries to minimize the bad things they're doing, it's going to be a leftist. It's going to be some Marxist clown who's like, maybe they're not all bad. Why is that?
Well, I think for the educated, the ones who are educated in Marxist philosophy, it makes perfect sense. This is how you dismantle the state to rebuild your communist utopia. So you have to do it instead of going through socialism, redistributing wealth. They see that, but I mean, you can't talk about this without looking at the emotional and personal problems of these people. I mean, these people are extremely jealous and embittered human beings. They don't like people who they perceive as having more than them. They hate the society. They blame all of their problems on the outside world and never on themselves. So of course, if they're unhappy with themselves or unhappy with their lives, then the problem is not them or the way they're living. It's the whole society that has so many evils. And if we could just destroy this thing and rebuild it in a different way, then everything will be wonderful and happy. They believe in creating paradise on earth because obviously they're godless people. They don't really appreciate human nature. They don't study human nature. They don't understand. They don't have any respect for human nature, both all of its wonderful things and all of its evil tendencies as well. They want to play God.
That certainly seems to be the case. Chadwick, I want to come back and see what your political thoughts are, because you're a very astute observer of that scene as well. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, this is a personal one for me, because other than my dad, there's nobody who has had a more profound impact on my view of the economy and of the markets than Porter Stansberry. And for the last 25 years, he has predicted almost every major economic and financial move, ups and downs of the market. He exposed the corruption at the heart of a major American automobile company, and he warned of the collapse of major lenders and predicted the 2008 financial crisis. Now, you might be saying, why am I telling you about this? Well, because he's just released a new documentary with his biggest prediction to date. Legendary economist Porter Stansberry is going to detail for you how a new financial crisis is brewing in America and the dangers it poses to your finances. If you own stocks, bonds, or have cash in the bank, you want to watch this documentary before it's too late. Watch it for free at lastelectionplot.com. That's lastelectionplot.com. self-deportation.com, paid for by Porter and Company. Chad, it feels like Biden can't lose, but we know, Biden can't win, but we know that there's the very present possibility of massive disappointment somehow, no matter what the polls tell us. How do you see 2024 shaping up right now?
Oh, I mean, I I hate to say this, but I have these conversations with people all the time, and they say the same thing: is the Democrats seem too calm. They don't seem freaked out enough. I feel like they've got something up their sleeve. I mean, I don't see how I don't see how Biden can win, but I also don't see how they're going to allow Trump to win. You know what I mean? And now they're all terrified that he's going to have them investigated for corruption and racketeering and everything else that went into his own persecution, which honestly I doubt he will. I don't think Trump's a very vengeful guy, unfortunately. I think that obviously everyone who has engineered this lawfare against him should certainly get what they dished out times 10. I think that's the only appropriate response. But I don't think Trump is actually, if and when he gets elected president, going to seek much revenge, sadly. I don't think he has a bone in his body of that.
By the way, he won't. The people that are talking about revenge tour and everything, I know that gets some of the base excited. But Trump will, if anything, he'll be, I think, more moderate in his second term than he was in the first. And that's why when he talks about, and look, I want the guy to win. I'm voting for him. I mean, I'm all full throttle behind him beating Joe Biden. But I worry about even his willingness to stick to deporting millions of illegals in the country. Because I remember what happened with the kids in cages stuff, and they really hammered the administration on that one, and they walked back from the whole thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, the deportation optics, the media is salivating looking for those optics of men coming in and taking families from their homes. But I mean, in the same vein, though, it would be wonderful to mass deport all those people, but you don't even need to. I mean, you can do a few simple things for them to self-deport. If you start very aggressively finding businesses that hire illegals like Uber and even mom and pop businesses, the fine doesn't even have to be big, a couple $1,000s, but really aggressively find those businesses, cut off all social services, all welfare services to the illegals, clamp down on the NGOs that are aiding this, obviously increase security at the border. I mean, these people will self-deport. They've done it before. I mean, surprisingly enough, it happened under Obama. I can't remember his first term or second term, but you had a net migration in the other direction over the border because he was clamping down on these freebies that immigrants were getting, illegal immigrants were getting. So I think if you pass policies along those lines, people will self-deport. I don't think you necessarily even need to go through what the media wants, those optics of tracking everyone down. Although that would be wonderful and obviously an important part of the program.
Chadwick Moore, everybody. Go follow him at chadwickmoore.com. And if you don't have his book on Tucker Carlson, go get it. It's called Tucker, so it's easy to remember. Chad, always good to see you.
Thanks, man. Great to see you, too.
Thanks so much.